Today's seminar. There's the first seminar for this year, 2021, and it's the first one of the conservation seminar series. You can view all the next ones. We have the next 6 ones planned, and you can see them on either through Hive or on the website. And this series is hosted by University of Cambridge Conservation Research Institute. So today we have the pleasure of hosting Professor Federica Di Palma, who will talk to us about building a biodiversity-based economy by making peace with nature. Professor Di Palma holds a PhD in immunogenetics from the University of Reading and brings over 15 years of experience in genomics and data science. She's currently the Professorial Fellow in Biodiversity in the School of Biological Sciences at the University of East Anglia. In addition, she holds the role of Chief Scientific Officer and Vice President Sectors at Genome British Columbia, which is a non-profit organization leading genomics innovation on Canada's West Coast and facilitates the adoption of genomics into society. Federica is passionate about exploring and preserving biodiversity around the world. She leads numerous multidisciplinary international research programs for development assistance committee countries aimed at generating strategic partnerships, building human and infrastructure capacity, and translating scientific knowledge into policy and private sector engagement to deliver long-term impact. Previously, she was Director of Science at the Elham Institute, where she led the Institute BBSRC Core Strategic Program in Food Security, as well as a wide variety of research programs aimed at delivering the cross-disciplinary application of novel computational and molecular biology technologies to the understanding of living systems. Federica's previous experience also includes her roles as the Assistant Director of Vertebrate Genome Biology at the Broad Institute of Harvard, a Senior Research Scientist and Service Center Manager at the Hubbard Center for Genome Studies at the University of New Hampshire, and a Fogarty Fellow at the National Institutes of Health. Thank you again all for joining. Before we start, just so you know, we'll accept all questions at the end. Federica's presentation will last approximately 40 minutes. And at that point, we'll open the floor for questions. You can either post your questions in the chat box, or you can raise your hand when the time comes and you'll be able to ask your question directly. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy this today's presentation, and the floor is yours, Federica. Thank you for joining.
Thank you very much, Vasilis. It's a pleasure to be here to give this talk, which is also the first of the year for you. So thank you very much for your introduction as well. So I will swiftly move to my second slide. Okay, let's see how this works. Okay, so yes, as Vasilis mentioned, I have been, I am a genomicist by training. My first postdoctoral fellowship was at the NIH, and it was right at the time when the human and mouse genomes were being sequenced, and when Eric Green was setting up his first intramural sequencing center. So that defined really very much my my passion and how I have approached a lot of the scientific questions moving forward. Genomics and really the understanding on how to manipulate data to extrapolate meaning has always been at the center of all of my scientific questions. Of late, we know that what we are in the middle of a pandemic, and that is a huge global challenge, of course. And as this global challenge has shown us already, it is extremely important to tackle this in a holistic way, to tackle this collaboratively, and to tackle it from a multidisciplinary point of view. And this is true for many other small global challenges, including the threats to the environment, to the society, and the economy that we were facing before the pandemic, and which we will continue to face in the post-pandemic world. And so, of course, we are threatened by climate change, pollution, overexploitation, invasive species, diseases. And one of my primary interest has been to characterize as much as possible through the use of genomics and computational biologies, and so just generally the principle of population genetics and evolutionary genomics, the understanding and characterization of this world's biodiversity. In the last 4 years, I have been privileged to be able to do so in collaboration with some of developing economy, both in East Africa and in Colombia. And this has really turn my interest into understanding how to not just characterize and understand such biodiversity, but also how should we position ourselves to preserve it, manage it for sustainable livelihoods. So about 2016, 2017, I started an ambitious project, which really started with a networking grant from BBSRC to set up a network which that today it's called Bridge Colombia, and each of the letters that spell the word bridge represents has a very specific meaning and can be translated in the exact same words in both English and Spanish: biodiversity, responsibility, innovation, development, growth, and education. And indeed, this is what is at the core of this network. We came together in 2017. I brought initially research institutions and some representations from the government, both from the UK, Colombia, and additional South American representation. And we decided that ambitiously we were going to continue to work under this common vision to build research capacity as well, which capacity in a number of ways, educational capacity as well as technological capacity, to try and understand the immense biodiversity that Colombia and in general South American countries have, and that is so important for their growth, both social and economical. So I'd like to show you a little video now which it tells you a little bit about.
Sorry, there will be just a few seconds until the computer adjusts so you can hear the audio.
Espero de esta alianza, la unión es la fuerza. Estamos en un momento histórico para Colombia, con unos desafíos enormes para construir sociedad alrededor de la biodiversidad.
Thank you. And I'm going to just go back.
Can you hear me now? Just checking.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to go back
Prof
into
Federica, the slide is a bit blurry, the letters. Is it maybe something else? Other windows are open on your computer? Like we could see them before, but now they're a bit blurry.
This slide is blurry.
Yeah, the black letters specifically, but it's okay. It's not prohibitive. There's nothing can change. Oh, the better now, I think. The internet speed adjusted.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry for that.
Okay, that's okay. I'm glad that it adjusted. So I just want to tell you a little bit about this, because I do find this to be not so much a novel idea, the building a network, but there are some components, I think, to the way we have approached coming together as different research institutions and industry partners and government that it really has made a difference and has contributed to the incredible success we have had to date. The network currently, as I said to you, started in 2017 with a very small networking grant of £20,000. Today, this network is recognized both by the UK and the Colombian government, is being replicated in other countries in South America, includes a membership of over 50 research organizations, industries, NGOs, governmental agencies. Of course, as I mentioned to you already, it promotes the sustainable use of biological resources in Colombia through a responsible innovation process and capacity building, conserving really the existing biodiversity through an integrated management system with a lot of emphasis on regional context, which is so important to many of South American countries, which are so diverse within their own countries as well, and engaging, of course, the local communities, and most importantly, the indigenous communities. Through this process, the network has incredibly contributed at strengthening the institution, and that is the aim of this network at a national level. There's been a lot of activities, as I will show you, a training activity, research activity, and really also an additional partnership building across various scientific fields. We have also supported through this network the reconciliation efforts between these stakeholders to improve the economic growth post-conflict. I'll explain a little bit more about this later. And in general, the network has set out to work very closely with the Colombian government and the UK government to establish a framework for the use of biodiversity for the economic development of the regional communities. The approach is that with all this organization and being very multidisciplinary as a distinction, you know, we are more than the sum of all parts, and I think this is extremely important. We are capable to bring together a variety of institutions and stakeholders, which are then able to really translate into action the Sustainable Development Goals. And for the first time, we are really seeing how our activities can have a sustainability and a long-term impact to the economic growth and the welfare of the country in the future. There is something I want to mention about the partnership, and that is that there are many of this network and there are many of these partnerships, and especially UK has been extremely good in financing this type of activities. But really there are only a few successfully, and this is not just in the UK, but actually worldwide. And one of the reasons, one of the characteristics we feel have made this partnership so successful is that we have included all the necessary stakeholders. But most importantly, we have sought guidance from our stakeholders. We have built a truly equitable relationship, and we have co-created the goals and the questions right in the beginning. All of the meetings, almost of this network, occurred in South America, just as an example. And of course, everyone really believed in the mission for preserving, managing, and obviously characterizing biodiversity. This is the network has organizes annual meeting. As I said to you, the annual meetings have always been in Colombia, and they brought together many institutions and many stakeholders. They tend to be, the theme slightly changes every year, and we have some guests. We had several NGOs last year presenting their work on biodiversity. The year before, we had a lot of ministry representations to understand a little bit where the government was positioning themselves with their scientific and research agenda. In the last year, this is in 2019, we for the first time brought the network events to the UK, and we have organized the European Researcher Nights by partnering with the National History Museum in London, and we also did another event doing in science with Colombia. We have the network as the successful approach of the network is such that has really facilitated an additional amount of activity, which was a little bit unexpected, and it took us by surprise, but everything moved extremely fast, and additional network essentially were born from this initial partnership. We have now a successful C3 Biodiversity Consortium in collaboration with the Ministry of Science in Colombia. We have a Colombia Science Media Network, including international journalists. We have a microbial ecology group. We have a public engagement in biodiversity network. We also were able, thanks to the work put together by this facilitated and the actual just the meetings facilitated by this network and the partnerships, we were able to obtain several funds. One that I would like to talk to you today is the Gcrf Colombia project, which was the first big Gcrf project awarded here in the UK. It's one of 37 projects. We have recently obtained funds to begin the Earth Biogenome Project Colombia, and in collaboration with the Ministry of Science. Of course, we have obtained the Gcrf cluster for meeting the policy challenges of biodiversity-based bioeconomies. We are in the middle of the first phase, and we will be applying to a second phase right around May. And we have also built an incredible work and network, which we call Peace with Nature, which is all about the work for reintegrating ex-combatants into a biodiversity environment. Now, it is really important to say that at the time we started this project, in 2016, we had the beginning of the peace process in Colombia, and the end of a conflict, civil conflict that lasted many years. And this is really, and the government felt that a way to move forward was indeed to invest in science, and to invest, of course, in the biodiversity science. So this was really an optimal moment for us, and a little bit of luck to really start our activity right at that time. So I just want to mention some of these activities. There's a lot to mention. I can't mention everything for you today, but what I mentioned that there's several others network have been established since this partnership. And I like to tell you about this C3 Biodiversity Consortium, because again, this was started off with funds for a workshop, and we built in collaboration with the Ministry of Science in Colombia, a consortium which would really propose to push forward the data revolution to grow Colombia's bioeconomy. And we really wanted to ensure the efficient and accurate analysis of all of the abundant biodiversity data that were being generated, and also to build an asset map in Colombia of the computing resources and understand how well they could be shared, and how well we could bring together a community of skilled people who could manage this data in a sustainable, secure, and collaborative and interoperable way. And the reason why I mention this is because we started this with one meeting, and sure enough, a year later, we obtained funds from the Royal Academy of Engineering to continue to sustain and maintain this network, which is now fully operational. And thanks to this funding, we have several pilot use cases that we are able to really implement in the country right now. So going back a little bit to the context, as I said to you, we had a peace agreement in 2016 under the presidencies of Santos, and this was extremely important. And because the government, both in the UK and in Colombia, had really saw this as an opportunity to move forward and promote a biodiversity-based science agenda, we had a couple of things that happened. The national strategy around biodiversity published by, at the time, the Ministry of Science, which was called at the time Ciencias, and also the establishment of the Newton Caldas Fund, with a focus on the bioeconomy in 2016. And you can see we arrived and established our network and started meeting just after this was happening in 2017. And the first Gcrf cluster project was awarded, and this is in 2017, the Gcrf Grow Colombia, which I want to really talk to you about. We then have a lot of the other activities that developed and that we were able to implement, but I want to mention a couple of things. And within 2 to 3 years of activity, we were really able to influence the green growth strategy left by President Santos, and we contributed the entire biodiversity addendum to this strategy, to this governmental strategy. And of course, we were able to also influence the policy as I had the privilege to be nominated by the UK government to represent this Mission de Sabios, which is mission of experts, which were gathered by the new president, President Duque in Colombia, international experts to advise on the science and innovation technology agenda of the country. And so I had this, this really was a very important development for moving forward what we had started a couple of years before. So peace, biodiversity, the right national conditions, and in the sense that the government, of course, was moving in the right directions, national scientific program. And so we were able to really build, with all of these things coming together, really a sentiment of international trust. And I think that this is what we still have to date, and this is what has been pivotal to our success. You know, Colombia is the second most mega diverse country. Many species are still being discovered. The national strategy implemented following the peace agreement allowed for a series of expeditions to take place in territories that for the very first time were free from the paramilitary control, and the scientists and institutions were able to explore. And many new registers appear of new species, and we were able to partner with the government and with some of these expeditions to really, through our Grow Colombia project, to do much of our activities on biodiversity. The EBP Colombia is something we are very proud, because you might have heard of the Earth Biogenome Project, of course, out of UC Davis, Harris Lewin with a few other colleagues putting together this ambitious project of sequencing everything on Earth, everything in life on Earth, and we now know of the Darwin Tree of Life, which is really sort of an Earth biogenome project here in the UK, funded by the Wellcome Trust. There have been many other Earth biogenome projects started in Norway, in Sweden. There are some in California, some more regional ones, California, Florida, and there is now, I'm working on a Canadian one, and I was very proud to have Colombia really join this effort. And the only way that this was really possible was not by obtaining separate funds through an international organization like the UK or somewhere else, but we actually were able to really influence the government through our policy work to set up an entire program dedicated to the Earth Biogenome Project. And in 2021, which is now around in March, they will launch this program, and there will be many funding calls available for their investigators, which will really promote the characterization of biodiversity through genomics. And we are now exploring partnership to this with, of course, through the Newton funds with the UK. But this was really something that Colombia Ministry of Science developed, and this was phenomenal. So now I get to this project that was funded. It was the first Gcrf call, and it was one of 37 projects that were funded. We are the only project that was centered in one country alone. And in fact, in our feedback when we were funded, we were told that this was a weakness. And I can tell you today, 3 years later, that this was not a weakness, this was an advantage. And that's also another reason why we were able to dedicate fully 100% to one country and to one partnership, and really achieve the results that we have achieved. I put on these slides a number of partners, but of course, I told you we have many more partners. These are probably the official ones that are receiving funds through these programs, but we have really used our bridge network to include in the activities additional partners, and so it kind of doesn't give justice to all the people working. But I want to recognize, of course, the Erlar Institute, which is where I was and where I led the project. The project is now moved to the University of East Anglia, but we have Aberystwyth, the National History Museum, the University of East Anglia, the Eden Project, the Humboldt Institute, the University of Los Andes, research institutes like CIATS. We have international ones like Sydney. And we also have the major research governmental institutes, which they work in various regions in Colombia, Humboldt, and then Sinchi in the Amazon. And we have, of course, the Pacific Institute and INVEMAR that takes care of all of the biodiversity of the sea, for example, the marine biodiversity. As I said to you, we started off with a Gcrf UKRI, an innovation fund of this first Gcrf, but we were able to add an additional funds as we went along over the last 3 years. Again, some of the postdocs and the early career research scientists and project managers that work in these projects. Another thing that what we did, which was very unusual for many projects, is that we set up a project management group with a partnership with the local institutions in Colombia, and the project management team is split between the UK, University of East Anglia, Colombia, and Colombia. And this has worked very well even when this pandemic struck. This is our website, and I just want to show you really the reach of activity we have in the country, that we were able to extend the really diverse regions and diverse ecosystems. This is just all of our research projects. Please go to the website and have a look. It's a beautiful website that we also developed by running a competition in Colombia. And so everybody that we have hired to build a website or to help us with graphic designing, or we have tried to build capacity in Colombia directly. So now I'll do this again.
Short.
Biodiversity is our conscience, our heart, and our future. It needs all of us to work together at the same time, building equitable partnerships, sharing openly, generating knowledge through innovative science, impacting decision-making, including all the voices, achieving economic prosperity and sustainability through peace and social welfare.
One species epitomizes our vision. It is powerful but vulnerable. In Andean indigenous cultures, it is believed to be a sacred animal, an older brother, a wizard who bridges heaven and earth, people and nature, and guides us into achieving nature's full potential in a transformative way. He has many names: Ucumari,
Ucumari,
Oso Andino,
Andean bear,
Oso Frontino,
Oso de Anteojos,
Spectacle Bear.
Paddington bear.
He's one of a kind, the only bear in South America. Unique is the ecosystems he lives in, Andean forests and paramos across the 3 mountain ranges in Colombia. He is the gentle guardian of these extraordinary places, dispersing seeds, restoring habitats, nourishing the ecosystems that support people too. Despite his important role, his existence is under threat. Climate change, habitat loss, and conflict with humans are decimating the Andean bear populations.
This is why we are using innovative genetic techniques to see how the bird populations are related to each other and make the best possible decisions to ensure their future and our future. If you share this vision of a society based on biodiversity, join us to make Colombia an example for the rest of the world. There's never been a better time to grow Colombia.
Okay, so just briefly, this program is divided into 3 major work packages or programs, as we call them, and they are all around the importance of biodiversity in Colombia and how essential it is for the country's heritage and the preservation of its unique systems, and also to improve the human welfare, the social equality, and economic development in this country. We focused one program on natural diversity with an aim of understanding more and filling that information gap that exists still and existed certainly at the time we started, and ultimately we're trying to prevent biodiversity loss with this information. We also focused on agricultural biodiversity and habitat loss, and we especially looking at accelerating breeding while maintaining sustainable farming practices. And we added something a little bit unusual, which is a socioeconomic program that worked very, very closely and extremely integrated with the natural diversity and the agricultural diversity in order to understand the strengthening of policy and ecosystem services, but also to understand how to produce data-based research evidence that we could use for this policy work. And one major aspect of the socioeconomic group has been to look at valuation of biodiversity, which is something that has been very controversial and complex, but extremely important. Our mandate is, of course, to do all of this while growing research skill, partnerships, and technological capacity. So although we have research projects, and I will show you a few of them, and in each of these work packages and programs, while we do this research, we also develop skills at all career levels. We continue to build partnerships, as you also have seen from the additional networks that have developed, and we build capacity through innovative technologies. The Natural Biodiversity Program, as I said, has several research objectives, enhancing the quality of the existing biological collections in Colombia, the characterization of biodiversity in the new collections that were made during the expeditions through the national government program, and into the regions that were previously inaccessible, and then to put forward action plans for management of key Colombia species. And as you might have gathered from the video, one of these species that we are working very closely is the Andean bear. Capacity building has been carried out in a form of, while we carrying out this research with postdocs in Colombia and postdocs in the UK. We also build capacity in the genomic methods for the analysis of museums collection and the conservation of Colombia species. We use sequencing technology, in-field sequencing technology, and then also, of course, the analysis of data, particularly for the evolutionary and the population genomics aspects. And these are three projects, three main projects in this program: the Andean bear, the wildlife protection. So we have been using some nanopore technology to teach the national security guards in Colombia how to do quick analysis of the samples that they seize for tracking the illegal wildlife trade. Of course, now, you know, following this pandemic, this has become even more important, this aspect of our work. And then, of course, the exploring the diversity of cacao species. This is incredibly important because although South America is not the major export of cacao, it is important for their livelihood. They do export about 20% of the global cacao production. But unfortunately, California, as well as the European Union, about 2 years ago, banned the export from South America due to the high level of cadmium in cacao. And so we have taken advantage of going in territories never explored before to sample a variety of cacao plants. And there is a project right now understanding genomically, phylogenetically, and also from a physiological point of view, if there is any of these species that are more resistant to the uptake of cadmium. I can't talk, of course, about all the projects, but I'd like to talk about the Natural Diversity Program Andean Bear Project, endemic to the tropical Andes, very vulnerable, listed. It's an umbrella species and is, as you've heard in the video, threatened by a number of activities. This work could not have been possible without the leadership of the National History Museum, the leadership of the Erland Institute, and the leadership of the Humboldt Institute, as well as additional partners from Colombia that have made this possible, including the national parks. We have entered an agreement with the national parks where we have been allowed to sample a number of these parks for obtaining samples for our study. And we are generating a high quality reference genomes in collaboration with some investigators at the University of Santa Cruz that had already begun this work. We have an objective to determine the genetic diversity of the Andean bear populations, and we have been using non-invasive samples collected. It says here from 22 individuals, but my slides are a little bit old. We have collected a lot more. I think we have over 100 samples right now, although briefly the collection of samples had to stop during the pandemic, but is now begun again. Understanding the state of populations, analysis of the effective population size, gene flow, heterozygosity, and inbreeding, analyzing the relationship between the genetic distance and the geographic distance of this population, particularly in the way that they were sampled geographically, and also with the help of the National History Museum's Ian Barnes group in particular, we were able to collect material from 29 individuals across Europe and the United States from museums dating around between 1914 and 2008, and we have been generating genotyping in order to also compare that past genetic diversity to the present one. This has no sound, but I just want to tell you that this was, it took us over a year to set up all these camera traps in collaboration with the Humboldt Institutes and the Parque Nacionales. And when And this is the only time out of the many times we've been in Colombia that we've seen a bear, actually, when our little video will come to our mobile phone to tell us that a bear visited one of the camera traps. We've obtained samples from both hair and feces. As I said to you, the Cacao, it's a really interesting project as well, and we hope to strengthen the collections. We've been working with Kew Gardens and as well on this, and really understanding the distribution of the different species. Agricultural biodiversity. This program also could not be possible without Jose de Vega, which is a fellow fully funded by this Gcrf, the Gcrf project. Jose was started working on agricultural genomics toolkit with CIAT many years, and thanks to this fellowship, he was able to expand his research program to really look at building more genetic resources and tools for accelerating breeding of relevant crops. But this is a very important and sensitive areas, and this is where our socioeconomic group has been working it's been working the most, as we of course wanted to accelerate breeding, but not at the expenses of the biodiversity. And so there was both a research and an economic, socioeconomic evaluation of the different pasture system to minimize the biodiversity loss. We also have a program on soil and crop health monitoring. And again, the capacity building in these programs is to continue to deliver training and to build in the lab of the various research institutions the methods and the pipeline for using this omic data. We have a lot more also projects. We have understanding the origin of the modern sugarcane with a sugarcane breeding institute in Colombia, sustainable cattle farming, more work on forages and soil microbiome. And the socioeconomic program really has been trying to interact with all of the researchers for the different projects in the natural and agricultural diversity program to make policy recommendation. One aspect of research they have been very interested in is understanding the economic valuation of biodiversity, and also we have been focusing on strategy for community and social engagement in order to understand community preference, stakeholders' preferences as well, particularly in the areas of sustainable farming and also some areas of ecotourism with our local communities. So the socioeconomic program is quite big. So we've got a tremendous team at the University of East Anglia working on the evaluation of biodiversity and on the policy recommendation. But we also have quite a big public engagement program that is led by the Eden Project in Cornwall, and we have also ecotourism project. You see here a pink dolphin. I've actually went to the Amazon to see them myself, and they are quite amazing. And we were extremely lucky to be invited by the ambassador, the UK ambassador in Colombia, to partake into a project with a local NGO in the Amazon, where we were able to tag some of these GPS tag some of these pink dolphins, and are currently generating the data. But one of the major work that we did is through not just the sort of research and looking at the data generated by this pink dolphin, but we sort of gave back to the local communities in the Amazon that allowed us to partake in this project by working with them on ecotourism, on building ecotourism strategies.
Sorry, Federica, about
a
few minutes left.
Okay.
A couple.
Yeah. So I will then just say that I think I've said enough, and I will just say that we have produced so far 3. The third is not published, but we have published 2 policy reports which have been given to both the Colombian and the UK governments. and on describing the Colombian natural capital, and also in understanding a little bit more and making suggestion on policy switches and you know, sort of behavioral switches to transition towards more sustainable and low carbon bioeconomies. The capacity building, I just want to sort of say that we have delivered 35 capacity buildings in collaboration with our bridge network and with the project alone. We've engaged more than 1,100 people with equal gender representation. We have trained, as I explained to you before, the former Colombia guerrilla. This we collaborated with the UN to achieve this, and with the University of Sydney, Jaime Gongora, who led this fantastic work, and with the embassy as well. But this has been also a lot in the news, and it's been one of the great achievements of the program, as a lot of these ex-guerrilla were retrained to really understand how to sample biodiversity and help us collect samples, and hopefully they can find an interest to continue to work to protect the local biodiversity. This is also a good story because this has led to a lot more funding that we have received. So the program originally funded one of these workshops, and we are now being funded by the government to continue with another 3 additional workshops. And our public engagement activities led by the Eden Project have been fantastic. I just want to show you this one, which is the Aprendiendo al Aire Libre, where we have learning outside the classroom, where we have really reached a number of children in various, in more than 30 public schools in Colombia. And we have used many of our projects as a way to teach them about biodiversity and how science can help protect and characterize this biodiversity. So, we have gone virtual, of course, since the pandemic, and we have been delivering a lot of our training without stopping. We've been working even harder, and this, of course, I will say, has only been possible because we had already built a fabulous network and partnerships and trust, and so it's been relatively easy for us to continue to work with all of the local NGOs and institutions to continue to deliver engagement and training. We have achieved a number of policy impacts, and I'm happy to talk to you about, to ask questions, but we're obviously working very closely with the government. We've been contacted by additional South American governments to do something similar, build something similar, and we work very closely with the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Federica. Thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, if you have any questions, you can either raise your hand or put them in the chat. Just a brief note as we're thinking of questions is that in 2 weeks, on the 27th of January, the next seminar in our series, we're hosting a panel, and it will be exceptionally interesting and very different to any other event we have hosted in the past. We're hosting Generation Z representatives, so we're having young people explaining their views on the value of nature. I'm showing now the details for that, as well as the link to sign up in the chat. So if you want, you can go directly to it, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Now, as I said, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and I'll see it. I have one question for you, Federica, as people are bringing in theirs. And I was wondering, so since, as you said, the biodiversity in Colombia and in general nature is very under-researched, and we're still learning a lot in discovering new species. My question is, now that more research initiatives expanded in this location, are your program specifically doing anything to make sure that the rights and the knowledge of the local people are not looted in a way, or on how are you making sure, or who is capitalizing on the knowledge that's coming out of it, or any findings that come out that could be used potentially by corporations?
Yeah. So we are looking into that in 2 ways. I can answer these questions for you. In the current program, Grow Colombia, we are, it's kind of being put on hold because of the pandemic. In last March, we were supposed to deliver a workshop with the ministries in Colombia, very important. And actually we had hired an IP firm here in the UK to also help us do this, to look at the access to biological resources. And the reason for this and benefit sharing for exactly this reason, because the government has still not ratified the Nagoya Protocol in Colombia, and with their new initiative and science program, they are at a point where this really needs to be discussed, and we need to come to some actions. So we will, by the end of the program, definitely define a framework for this. But what we will hope to do is to continue to implement the work that we might design in this framework with our Gcrf cluster. The Gcrf cluster is located in 4 regions in Colombia, and the activities are to use biodiversity as a mean for bioeconomy. And mostly what we are looking is using the immense plant biodiversity for natural products. And there is a lot of industry and a lot of international industry also that is going to be taking part in this. And so what you are mentioning is going to be vital for moving forward and really boosting the Colombia's economy. So we have not achieved, I don't have a lot of result on that front, but that is what we need to do for the second part of the next year and a half of the project.
Thank you very much for this answer. It's good to know, because we had a presentation in the past by someone in the Kew Garden, so they're explaining how, I think it's part of the CIMA consortium, and they're explaining also how they're working towards this and ensuring that the rights of locals are protected.
Yes.
As I said, if anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand or post them in the chat, and I can give you the flow. I cannot see any now, so I may follow up with another one. And that is, so I don't know, but based on your presentation, and my understanding, it's a very multi-dimensional project, and you cover many different aspects of it, especially as many partners are in it. I wanted to know, based on your focus, and in the next 1.5 years, if you could specify to us and sort of recap what you will be working on in your project. So anyone in this room who wants to collaborate and can think of ways that their work is similar to yours will know to come and talk to you.
So mostly we, so I hope that I gave you a good overview on if you have an interest. It's a huge partnership. I myself also have postdoc working on, and I'm specifically working on a reference library of fishes in Colombia, which I haven't had the chance to present to you. But I really wanted to present, sometimes I find that presenting to focus on one research project is really not giving you the appreciation of what we've been able to build in the last 2.5 years with this project, which I think is quite spectacular. And if you please write to me if you have an interest. We mostly use genetics, sequencing, and population genetics analysis to understand, the species distribution and species interactions and evolutionary histories, and also the threats with the local environment. We have the socioeconomic teams that works very closely with our research geneticists, because we also try to look at a problem not just from one angle, which is genetic diversity, but also, okay, if this animal like the Andean bear is threatened because farmers are killing it, we're trying to understand what are the social issues here that are causing this to happen. So we're not just interested in understanding the genetic diversity and eventually come up with a management for the species, but we also want to understand why are the farmers killing it. So our projects are very multidimensional, all of them, and they're really training a new generation of scientists. These postdocs now are capable of really looking not just at one problem, but which might involve, population genetics or conservation of a particular species, but they are looking at the entire issue. So I really encourage you to contact me, and maybe you would like to invite some of the PIs that actually could talk more in details about any of these projects I presented to you today. That would be absolutely fine.
Perfect. Thank you for this answer. And Thomas in the audience, and we're always on a hand for interesting speakers to bring in. So I'm sure we're going to chase down on people in your team. I just one more question that came now in the chat, and it's from Carol Ann. Carol, would you like to ask it directly, or would you like me to read it out for you?
Sure. I lost audio for a moment there, so I'm not sure if it has been commented on, but I'm curious about the focus and the awareness of Colombian researchers on climate change and its impact on the bioeconomy, specifically in Colombia, as compared to other areas that you've obviously worked in.
Yes, absolutely. I think whether are you talking about whether the government is aware and whether they are actively working towards the mitigation strategies for this? Is that what you mean, Caroline?
It sounds to me from this project that what you're doing is trying to catalog what is the current state of how things are, but I'm curious, particularly when you're talking about bioeconomy, cacao and everything, climate effects on habitat, just curious as to future thinking.
Yes, so there is a lot of research on this, absolutely. We don't carry out direct research on mitigations or strategies or the adaptation strategy to climate change. In this project, we're mostly focusing just on the characterization of the biodiversity and how it can be used. But we do interact with a lot of the institutions whose focus is to understand how the climate is changing and how that changing climate is affected. So we have just made actually these connections over the last year. We haven't actively really sort of have been able to integrate our data sets yet, but one of the things that we would like to do in the future is, for instance, to look at the biodiversity data generated for the Andean bears that we have collected across the different ranges in the national parks, compare that genetic diversity through time, from the data that also we have, and to some of the climate and environmental data that the institutions in Colombia have collected. So there are plans to look at this in a more integrated way and address that. But yes, there is awareness that we have not focused on these strategies in our research projects.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, Caroline. So we nearing the end. It's nearly 5, and I just wanted to remind everyone of in general, this seminar series this year is a bit different compared to other years. There were a few panel discussions, and especially the youth panel we have in 2 weeks' time. And I would like to remind everyone to join it. I've sent that link in the chat. I was really glad for your presentation, Federica. Thank you for joining. It's a great pleasure to hear about the project you're working on and how big it's become and how many different things you're looking at. And thank you very much for your presentation. For everyone else, thank you for joining today, and looking forward to seeing you in the rest of this series. So yeah.